Hey everybody, it's Michelle LaVore and
Devin LaVore
coming at ya. And we're so glad that you're here, and we do pray
As promised.
that you guys are blessed by what the Lord has to share. We really have been kind of in another just time with the Lord. You know, it's so funny because we can just, you know, as we're walking through, and we might be like, wow, it's been a while since we've been able to make a video, but we just know
We've been saying
so
that a
much
lot lately.
Experience.
From July and August, we've been saying that a lot lately.
Yeah, but just from so many times throughout our whole journey, like God releases us when it's time to release something. And it's like you don't want to serve something half-baked, right? Even if you know your kids are super hungry, you're not going to cook something in the oven and just decide, well, they're really hungry, let's pull it out, it's only half done. And it's like, that's not how it works, you know. It's like, all right, well, or
like me, you really want to serve, but it's like there's nothing to serve yet. You know.
But we are excited to just kind of get to share with you guys, update you with I don't know what the Lord has been speaking to us over really the last about 10 days or so of this journey that we're on. But before we begin...
Major dots being connected.
Yes.
If anyone caught that video from, like 2 weeks ago?
Yep. Lots of dots being connected.
Lots of dots. I've got to... What is it? I've got to... I forget.
A lovely bunch of
coconuts. Lovely bunch... Yeah, go ahead. Do the song.
I've got a lovely bunch of coconuts.
Yeah. A lovely bunch of dots connected. Diddly-dee.
Yes. But before we begin that, we do want to give a huge thank you to everyone who has given, who continues to give. It's just such a major blessing from the Lord, and we are support-based. So if you would like to give to us, you can. We have a PayPal, Cash App, and Venmo link below, and you can just give there. And huge thank you.
Yeah.
So, like we were singing, the Lord was connecting dots. And it's just been an interesting time because really at the start of last Sunday, God just brought us. It's funny because we're talking about being in between the Straits time, and I felt like as we were exiting the Straits, because that time frame ended on the 13th of August, and so if
it
you
is an actual Hebrew culture time frame. It's not just some prophetic time frame that we felt like we heard from the Lord, you know. It's an actual thing. I don't know. Is that gonna show?
Probably not.
Let's see if it's gonna show. Oh, there it is.
So it's like you enter into the Straits, and then it becomes narrow, and you start to exit the Straits,
and that's the Straits right there.
Gets wider.
Yeah.
You know, or like think of it as a hourglass, you know, the sand going from one side to the other.
That middle part.
And so I just felt like, well,
the tight part, the pressurous part.
But as we're coming out on August 11th, God started to take us through, walking us through Genesis 8:11, and now we're on verse 19, and he's been literally every day has been the verse associated with the day has been highlighted for us in our morning time.
And half the time we are not even doing it on purpose.
Yeah.
I mean, we're aware that that's the trail that we're on, but like this morning when I was sharing, I didn't realize that it was connected to Genesis 8:19.
Yeah.
I had no idea.
And so God's really just kind of been connecting these different aspects throughout the entire week, and has been walking us through verse by verse Genesis chapter 8. And it's just been this really awesome time with the Lord. And so here we are today on the 19th, and we'll see like how God finishes it. Genesis has 22 chapters in it. And so we'll see how he finishes things out. Yeah.
Has 22 verses.
Did I say chapters?
You said Genesis has 22 verses in it.
Well, Chapter
That's okay.
8.
That's what happens when you do videos late in the midnight hour.
Yeah.
You're giving your best. Sometimes your best is kind of tired.
Yes.
But like I think what was really cool, like on on August the 15th, because Genesis 8, we have a joke in our family. It's like it's just really deep revelation that comes from Genesis 8:15. And God spoke to Noah saying, "Woo." You know what I'm saying? It's like, because that's all it says. But basically, when we get that, we think, because we've gotten the number 8:15 before, and it basically is like, hey, expect a word from the Lord to come. It's going to be an instructional word or something like that. And that's exactly what happened. Mm-hmm. It was very, very cool.
Yeah. And so really, and kind of, we'll delve into it more, but like the summary of this last week, I really feel like falls under the category of instruction from the Lord. Mm-hmm. And for us, that's very significant.
Super.
Because God has always said, basically, the provision will come with the instruction. And it's like, you have to receive the instruction first, and then God will bring the provision. Mm-hmm. And so just the fact that really this whole time, God has been, this whole last week and into this week, it has just been a lot of instruction. Mm-hmm. And it started off with this word.
Instruction regarding like the vision.
Yes.
And like what to do, how to do it. A lot of administrative stuff. A lot of prophetic stuff, a lot of like identity of the vision and what the vision's all about, all of that, you know. Mm-hmm. Just to paint a little more of a picture there.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. Which is funny, speaking of painting pictures.
Oh, that's true.
Our youngest, who God has always said is the sign of the promise, he was really into painting pictures this week.
Paint by numbers.
And
he did some good work.
He did some really amazing job. You know,
would it be like a copyright infringement if we showed some of the work?
I don't know. Well, we could show some of the ones that I drew, but anyway, like he had me draw a few pictures, and then he painted them in, and then we were able to get him some actual paint by number things, and he just spent there's one day he probably spent 3 hours just.
Yeah,
painting.
Man. When that guy gets on a project, he does not let go. But like, buddy, maybe you need to take a break. He's like, no, I don't want to. And he'll finish the whole thing. Yeah. It's like, wow.
But I think it was so interesting because that's what I felt like the Lord was doing for us. He was just painting in some more just vision and his heart towards things. And so... But I wanted to start first with, at the beginning of the week, we had, God was on the 11th, God was speaking gather to us. Mm-hmm. And it was both morning and nighttime God times was talking about gathering and the harvest and gather. Like, when you receive what I have for you, you're going to go and gather. And we have a vision of... from many years ago where God shook an apple tree and all the apples fall off, and then all we did is gathered the apples. Yep. And these apples represented really the promises of God for us and desires of the heart. Yeah. And it was just like, all right, this is the time to gather, and all you had to do is pick them up off the ground. And
you didn't even have to pluck them off the tree. The Lord just grabbed the tree and was like, and all these apples come falling down.
Yeah.
That's cool.
And so God was really speaking that to our hearts. It's like, this is your instruction. You're going to gather. And then the following day, God was speaking about just go. Like the quickness and the speed of in which you're just going to go.
He was like, go.
Yeah,
he's like, don't hesitate. He's like, man, this is like, you know, there's times to like hang out and shop and evaluate and all that, but it's like you gotta look at this like it's a shopping spree.
And you got to time
where you gonna go and what you gonna get. Just go get it.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, if you've ever seen any of those shopping shows where they've got like 2 minutes on the clock and it's like, okay, go, and they're just piling stuff in.
Yeah.
It's that kind of idea where God's just like, when it is time to go, you are just going, no hesitation.
Mm-hmm.
This is not the time to just kind of sit back and wait.
And go into your cave and fast and like, pray over a decision.
It's like, no, God's like, I've already put
all the answers.
You what I have for you, so you're going. You have the instructions, therefore go.
Yeah. So I had to get up out the chair because my back was starting to. Now we've been sitting on these chairs for almost 4 years.
Yeah.
And my back was starting to hurt, so I'm just standing up now. So.
So
probably didn't need to know that, but there you go.
So we have gather, go, and then the Lord was speaking to us about sign, like the sign of the covenant, and just how I was really getting this idea of when you see the sign, and for us that would be the financial provision, then you're going to go and gather.
Go. Yes.
But as you gather and go, it's going to be a sign for you that I am establishing my covenant with you.
Mm-hmm.
And so there was just this idea that there's two things going on at the same time. It's like because as we go and gather, we're literally seeing the fulfillment of God's word. Therefore, it's establishing the covenant that God has made, the promise that he has made. And we were thinking about how David, it was as he's being taken from, the
Ziklag.
Yeah, well, and they come and get him at Hebron, and take him over to Jerusalem. And he starts to see all these people coming together and working together on his behalf. Mm-hmm. It's like he's seeing God establish the word that he had spoken over him years before.
He was noticing all these different things going on. It's because Abner from the house of Saul, one of his most faithful guys, is just coming over and say, hey, the Lord prophesied over you. Come on, let's go. There ain't no inheritance for me in Saul's house, so I'm going to help set you up. The best guy you could ever. It's funny because the Lord gave me a prophetic word, and I'm just going to share it because I just feel like it's okay to share. And he said that, he's like, I'm going to send my messenger, but don't resist, right? And I just thought, like, why would I resist your messenger? But hey, if you're saying it, then you obviously know me, and you know something I don't know. But think about it. If you're David and you're seeing Abner come at you, you're like, what's up, bro? What's up? You know what I'm saying? Like, what you doing over here? I got my whole army, bro. And you by yourself. What are you doing?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, there would be a resistance there. I mean, this Abner, it's like, no, he's like, that's like one of the most, like, even from a political standpoint, because that's kind of like what kingdoms were like the most ardent Saul follower is now coming to your house and just gonna support you and put you in the place that God prophesied for you to be in. It's just like there might be some resistance there, but even in that, David didn't resist, and he just noticed that like all this stuff was happening, and this was going on, and then that was happening, and he's just watching it happen. He's kind of being carried along in it, and he's like, wow, this is it. This is literally it. I cannot believe my eyes. And the Lord was reversing his situation before his eyes. What's that? Zephaniah 3:20?
Yeah.
Before his eyes, he's just seeing it. He's going, wow, this is literally happening. The moment I have been waiting for. So there could be some resistance, but he didn't resist, and he saw the Lord just start doing stuff on his behalf. And he didn't have to fight in that battle. And he didn't have to do all the stuff he normally did. He just was like, wow, this is just happening.
And so God was, so he was just really speaking about that sign and the idea of the covenant being established. And
by the most unlikely person.
Yeah. Well, and it just reminds me, even throughout our journey, God has talked about just kind of that whole idea of something small that comes and it just changes things, you know, like something that seems insignificant, but it completely transforms things. So we'll see what the Lord does. But yeah, and so we had gather, go, there's the sign of God establishing the covenant, but also the sign of, hey, you're released to go and gather. And then on the 14th, God was really speaking about the dry ground. And it was really awesome because we were then reminded of, back in 2021 in June, God walked us through all of Genesis chapter 1 through basically chapter 2, a few verses in, which was the days of creation. And
that is an entire playlist on our channel somewhere. I think it's like the
garden syllabus, right?
Grand Tour of the Garden or something like that.
And so...
Yeah. That's a lot of videos.
Yeah, it was literally every day God was walking us through all of these scriptures, very similar to this week. And this is something God's done with us many times before. And so, but what was interesting is it reminded me of the syllabus, because when we were going through the days of creation, the land... God was telling us, like, it represented for us the future.
Oh my gosh.
And so when the
Lord... That has been a word.
Yes.
All month
Yes.
long. We may have not talked about it too much on our videos, but man, that's been like the canvas upon which everything's being painted, you know?
Yes. And so... it was just this idea that God's like, I want to dry things up. I'm going to give you the dry land so you have a hope and a future.
A fresh future.
And the seas and the syllabus represented the past. And really that day there was a lot of, hey, let's remove the past and so that dry land can appear, so that there is a hope and a future for you. Don't get caught up in the things of the past. And it's that same idea of when the Israelites left Babylon, he said, depart, but like, don't bring Babylon with you. Like, leave that behind, because you're going forward to Jerusalem, to the place that I've established as yours. This is your future. You don't want to bring any of this with you into the future. Into
the future, Marty.
Into what God is giving. And, you know, just like with the Israelites when they came out of Egypt and were coming into the promised land, God was telling them, it's not like it was in Egypt. Don't think that. Know that I'm the one that's going to bless your land. I'm the one that you're going to plant seeds, but I'm going to water them. They're going to grow. I will be the one feeding you. It's by my blessing that these things are coming to pass. And so that was really cool. But then it also ended up being just for us in the vision of what God has for us. He was just kind of drying the ground as far as even in the vision with the homes, and like, what is it that you really want? And let's look for that here. And let's, you know, and just for us, it was taking away some of the restraints that we were kind of feeling. And it was like, oh,
yeah, because it's like there's multiple aspects to the dream and vision that God's given us, and we were applying this aspect to this one, and God's like, well, no, that's got a different measurement, that's got a different context, and it's like it doesn't fit. And I was like, oh, Okay. I didn't know. Yeah, that makes sense. It's like, now, what would you dream in this area? Oh, well, let me tell you. You know
Yeah, and so for us, that was like a drying up of the ground.
Mm-hmm.
It was like, whoa, okay, we can see.
You can see now, like, oh, I get
Future.
it. Yeah.
Well, and that day you were really thinking about the future. It was just like, okay, what is our life going to look like, 5 years from now, 10 years from now? Let's think about that, not just in this moment right here. And so,
particularly if you're thinking about house and future family size and all that stuff, if you get something for now, like if you're, well, let's get this house, this really cool house, and it fits you and one kid. When down the road, you're going to have about 5 or 6 or 7. Well, why don't you just get that house now? You know, if you can afford it.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And since you can afford it, get that one. Dream that one.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of the idea behind it.
Yeah.
Why wait? Get something that you're going to have to sell later. Like, why bother?
Yeah. But what was really cool too is that basically it was technically the morning of the 14th, because it was on the 13th, but at midnight. And at midnight, so technically it's on the 14th.
Yeah.
But on the 13th, like during our God time, I really felt like, man, I just really want to pray. I need to just be praying over places that God has put upon our hearts. Mm-hmm. And so, and I was going to start praying over the places during God time, but wisdom spoke and was like, hey, these kids need to go to bed. So,
and let me tell you, that was a lot of places. I was like, girl, you ain't, I just wanted to mention them. And then she started praying for Nashville, and then she starts going on a soliloquy. I was like, no.
Yeah.
We're not going to do that a whole bunch of times. No.
Yeah. So, long story short, at midnight, little Acts 16:25, I was just started praying over the places that God has put upon our hearts and
geographical locations.
And it was just so awesome, because that's where this painting picture comes in, because God was just really painting, I felt like, his heart.
Paint by numbers.
For these
Paint
places.
By locations.
Yeah, it was just like, this is the feel, the sense of what the Spirit and the work that the Spirit's going to be doing in these places. And it was just so awesome. And so I ended up praying over quite a few of the places. And then actually later on the 14th at night, I prayed again for the rest of the places. And it was just like, wow, it was just so amazing, and how God was just literally connecting the dots for all the places, but also really painting in kind of his heart for these places, what he wants to establish there, kind of just like, just what he wants to establish there in the future. And then it was cool because there were a few places that we had that were really kind of in a mystery place for me, because I'm like, well, Lord, I know you've highlighted these in the past, but they haven't been really talked about recently, like what's going on. And then God started revealing, actually onto the 15th, it was just like, here, this is what I have for this place and this place. And it was just like, oh, that makes sense. Like, it was so awesome to be able to go through
kind
all of that.
More of a dry ground type of situation.
Yeah. Exactly. And that's what I was feeling. I was like, wow, God, you are literally just pulling back, letting us see the dry ground, letting us see what you have out for us and your heart for all of these different places you've put, have sown into us. And
can I say something really quick? Yeah, so when you take all these geographical locations and you just put dots on them, put little pins on them, but then when you connect the dots, it looks like a farming tool, kind of like
Like
a plow.
plow.
That's what it is. It looks like a plow. I was like, oh my
Yeah.
gosh. God, can you be really that serious and specific and intricate? And it's just like, well, of course you can. Obviously. You're planning it out. You don't plan and just... I mean, God plans like even little secret revelations, even in pictures and symbols. And it literally looks like a plow.
Yeah.
I'm like... This looks like a plow. It's like, because that's what we're called to do. We're called to farm and build in the Spirit.
Mm-hmm.
You see the shirt, don't you?
Yep.
You know what I'm saying? No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so it was just really amazing
cool.
to see that. And it really was a picture that God was painting in. And it's like, wow, this is amazing. And so then after that, God was speaking. It was like, and the Lord came to Noah saying, and God really just spoke about like
healing.
Yeah,
right?
He's going to bring healing. He's going to...
he said He's going to heal the thing that's been hindering.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Abram told God, like, God, you have not given me any seed. There's no heir. And then this servant who's not of my blood is going to be the inheritor of everything you're saying. And God's like, nope, that's not going to happen. This is the way it's going to happen. It's like, well, how's that going to happen? Because we don't have... He's saying it in a sense of we should already have that by now.
Yeah.
You know? Whoo, doesn't that just hit? Mm-hmm. That just hits. After everything that we've gone through in our lives, you know, you being 41, me being 52, it's just like we should... All these things that we're believing for, we should have... Nah, I mean, we're way beyond what would be considered normal. But but it's like these things that we're believing for, it's like, shouldn't we already have that? But it's like we don't. And so it's like Abram. It's like, we've been married for so long. God, we don't have any children. Like, and you're saying it's through our seed that you're going to produce this. Like, when's that going to happen? Mm-hmm. You know? And it's like, and God was just saying, like, that's the thing. Everyone has a thing that's keeping them from going forward. It's a God level subtraction. Mm-hmm. He knows. And it's like, that's going to be your issue until it's time for God to step in and work a miracle in your life. Mm-hmm. And that was a bona fide raised from the dead, walking on water miracle for Sarah to become pregnant in the natural way. Yeah. I mean, you're talking like immaculate conception level miracle, you know? And so that's kind of what we're looking for, you know? Yeah. We're looking for God to do some God is real, bam, next level miracle, you know? Not that we need to know that God's real, but it's just when those things happen, it's like God just turns the spotlight on himself and the reality of he does work and he does act, and at the right time when he's ready to move and step in, man, you are sure glad you were in the right place at the right time to receive what he had for you, and you didn't quit and go wandering off somewhere else, you know. God's still with you even when you're laying in the dust and the dirt, but if you're laying in the dust and the dirt, you're not ready to receive the promise he has for you. You're not ready to receive, so he's got to pick you up and dust you off and kind of get your faith going again, get your heart alive again, you know, clear, you know, he's got to do one of those numbers, but
yeah. And so God was he was speaking a lot to us there. And then even with
I said a lot more than the connect the dots plow thing, but you know, that's how I do.
Yeah. And you kind of actually, it was, you know, there was the 15th that the Lord was speaking, saying, but then even kind of rolling over into the 16th, that was again where God was really speaking to our family. And because it's about God spoke to Noah saying, hey, it's time for you to come out of the ark. And again, God really hit on, like, don't, like, leave behind the old. we're coming into the new. And it's like, you have been faithful, so I have, it was the commendation and a warning. It was like, hey, come out, but again, let me remind you, kind of like, don't go back to anything that I've brought out for you. It's kind of like the Deuteronomy 28, where God's like, hey, I've got all these blessings for you if you obey me and follow me, but if you don't, this is what's going to happen, all the curses that would come upon the people. And it was spoken before they were going to go into the land of promise. And so,
well, and it was just a reminder of like, hey, remember, keep doing, when a lot of times, keep doing what got you there. A lot of times performers or athletes or teams, they get to the championship level and they get so excited and they're so amped because they're there that they start playing different and they start doing different. And the Lord knows, like, yep, that's normal. That's what happens. Even in Rick Joyner's book, The Final Quest, he talked about people getting to the top of the mountain and they're so excited and whoa, and then they like fall off the mountain or something. It's like, no, you got to stay close to the Lord. And so he was just reminding about humility, fear of the Lord, and just, keep praying and seeking. But it's like, if the Lord says, go fast, then go fast. But you are being obedient to what he's saying to do. You're not, the Lord isn't saying, hold on, and you feel this hold in your spirit, but you're still taking off anyway. Okay, that's the kind of stuff you were supposed to learn in the wilderness. Don't do that. You know what I'm saying? And you were tested many, many, many times and approved as one who would not do that. So you can't be afraid to fail either. That was another thing the Lord said in that prophetic word. He said, don't be afraid of hearing right or wrong. Just trust in my leadership. Because God knows we're not trying to hear wrong and we're not trying to do something for ourselves. It's just, we're just trying to listen to the Lord and follow the Lord. And he's the one that's taken us even this far. He's the one that sustained us, as our boat is still floating in the air with no wings off, that's a whole nother vision. But it's kind of like where our life is at right now, in this in-between place. But we are being miraculously sustained. It's almost like against science and physics and everything natural to man, that we're still here. And we're still sustained, and we're doing less videos in the last 2 months than we've done all year, because God has had us in such a place. But he's the one that proves himself to be the sustainer.
Well, and what I really loved about the idea of just like, don't be afraid to hear wrong, but just trust his leadership, was the fact that our trust is in him. It's not on our own ability to hear right. Especially when you are in a place where it's like you're just constantly listening for the Lord, being quick to the promptings of the Spirit. But it's just like, all right, we can trust he will lead. You're going to be led forth by the Prince of Peace. He's going to come in and just go, and you're just going to go with the Spirit. And so I think in that also, it's God's like, he's trying to cast out all fear. It's like, I don't want you to be in a place of fear, because even in fear, you could make wrong decisions just because you're afraid, and it's like, if God is saying go, you don't want to hesitate. You don't want, it's like, and you can trust that he is leading. He will, the Spirit will warn you that, you can go forth into this new thing with him leading you forward. And so I just thought that was a really awesome just aspect that the Lord touched on.
It literally took the weight and pressure of performance off. It was just like, hey, just because when you're going really fast, you could, you feel like you can mess up even more. But it's like, you're not trying to mess up. If I say, hey, go over, it's like, look at all these well-trained dogs. They could be out at this dog park, and then, the master says, hey, come back. They stop immediately and come back. in the midst of all the excitement. He's like, that's what you've been trained in. Trust in me. Trust in the fact that I've already trained you for the thing that you might be afraid is going to happen. That's never going to happen, because that happens to untrained people. We had a dog one time. That dog was untrainable. Anyway, she would not come. She gets outside, boom, she gone. She out there.
Yeah.
And she's like, Lexi. That was her name, Lexi. Like, Lexi, come here. She's gone. And she just would not listen to me at all. And I was like, yep, that's why I like Australian cattle dogs, right there. Anyway, that's a whole nother story. Anyway.
That is. That was a long time ago.
But it's just a great picture of an untrained dog. Very likable and lovable, but just untrained. You know? Just non-responsive to anything but her own impulses.
Yeah. And so then basically we came into the 17th, and it's about when, he's still speaking to Noah, saying, like, all right, then you're going to bring out the animals. And it really was, again, the Lord saying, like, hey, I want you to bring out every dream, every vision, like, let it go, but let it grow. And
when you go into this
next season, of our life, of just like, hey, this is
post
the time.
Provision.
Yes.
When the provision has been released.
Yes. Yeah, and so it's like, okay, then you're going to go forth and you're going to do all of these. Oh, actually, which I forgot about, was even the night before, it's funny because the Lord actually, we're Genesis 8:16, and he's talking to our family, but then he jumped forward really to verse 20.
Yeah, about building the altar.
About building the altar, because that's really the first thing Noah did, was he built the altar. And that actually took us all the way back to 2020, when God said, when you come into new land, I want you to build me an altar. And for us, that it just, again, is following the Spirit, but it's really a lot of prayer, worship, praising the Lord, just following him and what the Spirit's doing and how the Spirit is moving upon us. But it's just that sense of, like, as you go forward, you're going to be worshiping and building an altar for me. And then it's like, then from that place, you're going to release all the visions and dreams that God has placed within us, and let them just start growing, let them start developing, and it's
like the whole vision in and of itself is an altar to be built to the Lord. So
yeah,
without getting into details, we're trying to not be very detail oriented, because you don't want that. You know what I'm saying? It's too much. So I think we're doing a pretty good job by giving you the big bullet points and being general.
Yeah.
Because it's like the details you'll be lost. In one singular detail, we can make a 4-hour video.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And there's a lot of details.
Yeah.
But
well,
ultimately,
and the Lord has things for all of us to carry that.
Yeah.
We
and
just carry.
And you can just relate. Yeah.
But yeah, and so that was also a very key aspect that the Lord was talking about, was you go forth, you build the altar, but then you let everything out. You let, even the creepy crawly things, like the smallest things that God is like, hey, I put that in your heart, like, bring it out.
Oh, I thought we were talking about reptiles there. I thought we were going to go into reptiles and enclosures and heat lamps.
Not quite.
No? Okay, that's fine. For another time.
Yes.
Another time.
And then, and so then yesterday we come to the part where it's talking about, hey, and Noah went out of the ark. And, and again, God was just really speaking to, hey, when you come out of the ark, it's like, you're not going back to the way things were. And actually, it was interesting because both of us had dreams in the morning that related to...
Well, I was going back to work.
and we were going back to church.
Yeah, we're going back to like, the traditional church building type thing. And it was like, oh, that's really interesting. Because, go ahead.
Yeah, so both of us, it was so interesting because we both had these different, these dreams that were so elements where you could really relate to one another, and it was just this sense of like, that's not where you're supposed to be, because
it's interesting.
It was just like, no, that's not the place that the Lord has you. He has you in a completely different place. Mm-hmm. And so again, I feel like God's saying, like, when you come out, you're not going back. This is not, okay, well, this was, we're in this ark for a while, and now we're coming out to do the same things we used to do. It's like, no, it's totally different. It's all new. You're going to come out, and we're walking forward into this new place.
We're going out the front door of Babylon. Now let's go to the back door and go back in. No. We're not doing that.
Yeah. But then last night, which I thought was so cool because God has spoken this to us, but was bringing in more revelation, is having to do with going from one ark to another ark.
Yeah. I was wondering if you were going to bring that up.
Yeah. And so it was just really awesome because this part of our journey, we've really been in the ark, like Noah's ark, because it was a place of protection, but it was a place to keep Noah and his family alive and all the animals alive. Like, that was their primary job, was literally to make sure the animals stayed alive. And for us, the animals relate to the dreams and visions that God has given us.
And that's a significant thing because I believe there are a lot of people out there with their own personal arcs and their own hearts where their animals have died. Mm-hmm. Quite a few, if not all of them. The Lord showed me this one vision of this lady. She was in her ark, and not only did her animals die, but they had died so long ago that they deteriorated into a black oil. Mm-hmm. And then there came this time where it's just like, all right, we're coming out of the ark. It's almost like everyone had this ultimate release date, and all the ark doors were opened at once, and she came sliding out of the ark in this oily mixture. She was still there. It's not really a salvation thing. It's just walking with the Lord and training with and walking by faith and believing and going through the difficulty and all the different character stuff that God works on your heart over a period of years. Mm-hmm. And she just didn't make it. None of her
with the animals.
Yeah,
she made it.
Yeah, she made it. I mean, she was fine ultimately, but it's like, but then she just doused in all this black and the Lord just washed her off. He was just like, he was so nice. He wasn't upset with her or mad at her or nothing. He just washed her off and everything, and she was just like, she felt so much better. And then she ended up sitting at this picnic table with another guy who had gone through the same experience, and it was almost like there was a connection for them to like, man, we should believe this time. It was like they became friends because of their mutual failure that ended up leading to their mutual success. Mm-hmm. Or at least another chance at it,
Yeah, it was funny. I was actually thinking of that vision earlier. In our
but
video.
That's also when the Lord took us through the apple orchard, where before the last thing he did was shake the apples, or shake the tree, and all these apples fell. But when you took us through the apple orchard and there was all these trees, a lot of them didn't have the apples, and then you look on the ground, the apples are on the ground, and they were rotting. Mm-hmm. And I was like, whoa, Lord, what is this? And he's like, those trees represent people, and those apples are their dreams and their visions. Mm-hmm. That I gave to them to watch over, like Adam and Eve, watch the garden of these visions and these dreams, and they got overwhelmed, and they got overwhelmed by disappointment or all these different things, but eventually they just dropped the ball. They dropped the apples, they dropped the dreams and the visions that I put in them, and they just went on to survive and just do other things, but that's what I had for them. But now it's rotting. It's the same thing. as the animals and that are representing the dreams and visions in our own personal ark stories.
Yeah. And so really this whole time we've been on this journey, it's been about keeping those dreams and visions alive, holding fast to what God has given
Revelation
us.
3:11, man, that's been a staple for years.
Yes.
It's like, hold fast.
And but I really felt like God was saying, we're going from one ark to another ark. But he really was specific in that it's like the Ark of the Covenant.
Mm-hmm.
And again, covenant, and that's what it's like. You're going to see God start to establish it. You're going to see the establishment of his covenant, of the promise that he's made. But it was speaking of like the Ark of the Covenant, that was what God used. It's where his presence was when the Israelites were in the wilderness. And even once it was into the tabernacle itself, it's where he allowed his Shekinah glory to be. Mm-hmm. And he would, the high priest could go in once a year and be before the presence of the Lord. So it just...
Well, and that's our vision, to be in the house of the Lord.
Exactly.
To build the house of the Lord. But it's going to be in a different way.
Yeah, and it's like God's presence being upon what he's doing. And so I really feel like it's really the Ark of the Covenant is really about God and his glory coming down, his presence. And I just believe that as we come into this next season, that's what we'll be experiencing. We'll be experiencing the presence of God in a different way, in like a more tangible, felt way.
Oh, yeah.
And but then also I was really seeing how the Ark of the Covenant was, I think, could be symbolic of the Holy Spirit, because
the presence
of the Lord was upon the Ark. Within the Ark itself, it carried the 10 Commandments, the manna, and then the Aaron's staff or rod. And so it's like the word of God, like the fresh daily manna of the Lord, and then also the authority. And it's like when we have the Holy Spirit, the Spirit writes the law of God upon our hearts, and the Spirit can give us that daily bread that we need, highlighting.
Well, and it also represented like the miraculous physical provision.
Yes.
That you need, and it's like God's going to do it. It's almost like body, soul, and spirit.
Yeah. But then also with the rod, it represented the authority. And so it's like when you have the anointing of the Spirit, you have the authority to go forth. And so, but also when the presence of God was upon the ark, the people remained where they were. But when he lifted, the cloud lifted, then it was time for them to move. And that's kind of like how the Spirit operates in our own life, where it's like the Spirit of God can allow you to know, hey, this is a time to be resting. This is a time to be going. This is a time to be praying. Or, or the Spirit can give you warnings and direction. And you see that with the Apostle Paul and his ministry, how many times he was like, I wanted to go here, but the Spirit had me go over this way. And so I feel like that's what we're going to be entering into, is just a time that we're led by the Spirit now, but that it's going to be emphasized by the presence of God. That he's like, I am leading you forward. And much like with Joshua and the Israelites, when they were getting ready to cross the Jordan, God had commanded that the Ark of the Covenant with the priests was at least 2,000 cubits ahead of the people, because he was saying, you haven't been this way before, and so you need to be able to see where you're going and like how I'm leading. And obviously, even once they get across into the promised land, God was doing things different. You know, they circled around Jericho and they shout and the walls fall down. That's not the usual method of conquering a city. And so I feel like the same is true for the Lord as he brings us forward. It's not going to be by our might, our power, but it's by his Spirit.
Or the usual way things are done.
Yeah.
And I think that's really, particularly here in the U.S., the way things are done is really just being shaken. And it's under such a great confrontation. There's such a confrontation of powers going on right now. And it's like, wow. Whatever comes out of this, be it positive or negative, it's just going to be different on the other side of the equal sign, because, man, people are either going to value, they're going to show what they value, you know, and it's just interesting to see it all happen. It's just another kind of side example.
Yeah, and so that kind of leads us to today, and today has been about just the dreams and visions, but that God is like, I'm going to give the provision. Like,
it's kind of like a repeat of what he said on what the 17th?
Yeah, and it's
I wasn't even thinking about it. I was like, wow, this is a repeat of that. A provision for the vision, but it just from a different perspective, a different angle on it.
Yeah, and so it's like God's going to go, you know, he's going to go before us. And it's like when you receive the provision, that's the sign for you to go, to gather, and to build an altar, and to release all of the dreams and visions that God's put upon our hearts, and to see things be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth.
Multiply. Yeah, you gotta have a multi things flying, multiplying.
And so,
well, and that's going to be the healing, because the Lord really talked a lot about healing.
He did.
Healing the infirmity, healing the thing that's hindering you. And I'm like, well, it's like, well, what was hindering Abraham? Well, they were not able to conceive. It's like, and even the scripture says Sarah's womb was dead. So it's like, that was the thing that hindered. He's like, okay, then that's what I did, right? And I was like, okay, well, for us, it always seems trivial to me for finances to be the thing that hinders, because it always just seems petty, like you're asking for something superficial or something like that. But it's like, nope, money is what everyone needs, no matter where you are, or no matter what time in history you live in. You need provision. That's why it could be just called provision.
Yeah.
And it's just
like,
well,
if you needed a bunch of wood, then that's, you know.
Yeah, having a pile of money ain't gonna do you much. How much wood can you buy with that?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And so, we could go ask the woodchuck. But anyway, but yeah, so we're just like, that would be healing the infirmity that we have, because that's the only thing we're missing. It's like we just miss the finances to be able to do what we want to do. And I think a lot of people also fit into that class, into that category of like, that's the training and the promise they're waiting for, and this is what God's be doing in their life, and the only thing they're missing is the provision. And so I'm just interested to see what dams are going to break that allow this massive flow of provision from the Lord, this wealth transfer that everyone's talking about, that I've heard so much about myself from the Lord. But yeah, and so that's what he's talking about, is really more about, it's going to heal you. And when you see that, man, it's just going to bring healing to your heart. It's going to, like that 153 large fish, you know, it's just like, it brought a sense of restoration. It opened their eyes the first time, but then the second time, post-resurrection, it kind of had the same effect. It opened their eyes again, but it was like, oh, the Lord, of course, the Lord's in charge. He can do anything, anytime he wants to. We just have to trust in him and follow him. And that's what the 153 large fish was a sign of. It was a reminder of like, hey, God can just bring fish out of nothing. He can bring a coin out of a fish's mouth to pay your taxes. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So it really will bring a healing to our hearts, you know, when things do come to pass. And it's the same thing, I think, with anybody, even no matter what you're believing for. When that impossible X factor thing is touched by the Lord, oh my gosh, it's going to set you free, whatever that is. You know?
Yeah. Body, soul, and spirit.
Body, soul, and spirit. We say that a lot in this here house.
So I think that really covers very much what God's been doing with us over these days, and just I don't know, it's just been really awesome to see. But I do believe like God is like, I'm giving you the instructions, but with that is going to come the provision. And so again, there's the provision piece that we're waiting for. But I don't know, I love that God's like, okay, here are the instructions. This is what I'm telling you to do. I'm connecting the dots. I'm painting
and it's not
things
stuff
in.
we haven't heard 100 times before.
Yeah.
It's just, let's go over it again. Let's remind again.
Yeah.
Let's make sure you know before you go out there, so you don't go run wild with excitement and then you lose it.
Yeah.
And so we're like, okay, maintain discipline.
Yes. But
who knows that quote, man? That would be deep if someone knew where that came from. That would be just awesome.
But
maintain discipline.
But yeah, so I think that's all that we have for you guys. We do pray blessing on you.
Yep.
And yeah, until next time, we will see you later.
We love you guys.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Whenever that is. Right?